playoff leaders. We started getting into that, Sammy, and you were looking at some touchdowns. I was looking at some yardage. What I do find notable is that with the yardage ones, most of the time you want somebody who's going to play in 4 games. Now, a couple of years ago, what you saw in the end were the 2 teams that had the buys meet in the title game. And so that year, the players that played 3 games actually were your leaders for passing, rushing, and receiving. But most of the time, it ends up being 4. Last year, it was a clean sweep for the Chiefs. Mahomes was your passing leader, Pacheco, your rushing leader, Kelsey, your receiving leader. If we were just talking about the receiving leader market, how it feels a bit wonky, and there's nobody great up there at the top, and we're expecting Nico Collins, your leader right now, of the alive players at least, at 122. What about Kelsey again? You brought up St. Brown at 4-1, has such a short number, even though he hasn't played again. And we were going over Kelsey and his playoff numbers. Wildcard game, it's 51.5 and plus 160 for an anytime touchdown. What about Kelsey for receiving leader right now, which you can find at 15-1?
Sure. You could convince me into anything at the right number.
Yeah.
And when you were talking Kelsey, I looked one leg lower and saw Mark Andrews at 30. And like, well, do I like Mark Andrews? Not really. 30-1.
What do you get?
Hell yeah.
You get the number first game.
I know. In the first game, he did not. I don't believe he scored a touchdown in the first game. But I know Bateman had one. I don't think Andrews had one.
Okay.
Yeah,
you can go a number of ways. But you think this is it for the Ravens, though, right?
I hope so.
This week? Yeah. I'm considering Kelsey for receiving yards, even though he hasn't played. Nico Collins, big dog. He's 4-1 there. And we mentioned, let's see who else is up there. McLaurin's second favorite. I just don't get it. I don't quite understand that one. Okay, this side has Nico at 8-1. So I'd consider Kelsey, but I want to talk about rushing. So rushing yards. Now, yeah, again, usually need to play 4 games. So Henry has 186, and he's minus 150, your favorite. So I'm looking at, if you like Buffalo in the game, you're not going to take Derrick Henry for something like this. Saquon is the second favorite at plus 150. Saquon is 1 yard behind James Cook, but the difference in price between Saquon and Cook is plus 150 and plus 800. You think the Bills are going to win the game? Going with Cook is not an awful idea.
Cook definitely speaks to me at that number, and try and get the best number, obviously, because these prices are all different. It looks like the best number on Cook rushing yards is 10-1.
10-1. Wow.
There's a 10. Yeah. MGM has 650.
So
no, I think the hardest part, I think this is, let me put it this way. I think it's a harder market to book than it is to bet, because the math gets extremely tricky when you have the Ravens and the Bills meeting in a coin flip game this Sunday. You have 2 extremely talented running backs that could both lead the playoffs in rushing, but they play each other in the second round. So it's very difficult. Like, obviously you get to a number and then people bet the number, and you eventually get to where you need to be behind the counter. But obviously the price goes in the garbage on Henry if the Ravens lose. And then what does the Cook number do if, say, him and Henry both rush for 110 yards this weekend, but the Bills win and the Ravens lose? What does the Cook number go to then off the 10-1? He's got to go to minus 120 or minus 200, you think?
Well, I was just going to say 2-1 because he's probably behind Saquon.
I guess, but the
right?
Eagles
The
will then
Eagles
be
win.
dogs against the Lions because the
True.
Lions will be favored at home, assuming the Lions beat the football team. Sorry, I
And
just
the
can't
Bills
say
will be
Commanders. The
dogs.
football team. Yes, small dogs. Small dogs.
Mm-hmm.
1.5 maybe. Because we did see, remember, we saw Buffalo as a 2.5 point favorite at home against Kansas City. So it's going to be a tight line. It'd be like Chiefs 1.5, 2, maybe. Um, but that's what you're looking for. You're looking for guys at good prices that could make runs, and Buffalo can definitely beat Baltimore. I've heard a lot of Baltimore, and a lot of Baltimore on this network for that matter. The game's a pick. It's a pick 'em. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, James Cook, and I know Paul loves James Cook. I don't think we have to sell him on the idea of, oh, there's Paul right there. I made the Cook bet this morning. All right, there you go. I was visioning Paul clacking away as we were talking about Cook, and he did. I handicapped that one right. He should not be 10-1 while Derrick Henry's minus 105 when they play in a virtual coin flip. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Yes. I would agree with that. And if you're tempted by Lamar, who's 30-1, look, if the Ravens are going to make it to the Super Bowl, yeah, his number's going to be good. He's not out rushing Henry. Not over the course of 4 games. It's not happening as long as Henry is healthy. So I wouldn't make that bet. Gibbs is 10-1, has not played yet. Montgomery 30, Pacheco 50. That's going to be tough. If you've played one less game, potentially. Now, if it's 1-1 in the end, if it's the Chiefs and Lions, well, then maybe one of them is probably, they could win. But yeah, I wouldn't go with a bye player. Okay, forget the odds for a second. Let me just ask you this. Who do you think is going to be the passing leader? If you look the last few years, Mahomes last year, 2 years ago it was Burrow, played in 3 games. And in 2021, it was Staffy, played in 4 games. God, almost 1,200 yards. That was a crazy year for passing in the playoffs. Right now, Stroud's the leader. We expect him to get bounced. Josh Allen's second at 272. And then you go to Jaden Daniels, 268, probably out. Stafford, 209, probably out. And then you get to Lamar and Hurts. They're less than 200 yards. So who would you just make a prediction, forget the odds? Who's going to be the passing leader?
It's so hard because the quarterbacks I like the most are going to play one less game if they win the Super Bowl or if they go to
Mm-hmm.
the Super Bowl. That's Detroit and Kansas City. And you mentioned last year that Kansas City had the leader in passing, rushing, and receiving. Well, they were a wild card team last year, right? Or they played wild card weekend, I should say. They weren't a wild card team, but they played in that first round
Correct.
against Miami in that game that was minus 80 degrees or whatever the temperature was in Kansas City. So they played the extra game that year. I would probably, if you made me pick one right now of all the guys in the field, I would go Allen.
So would I. He's the 3-1 favorite, but at 3-1, I don't see value because we've got to
No.
take down the Ravens in a coin flip. We got to go to Arrowhead and win as a dog, and then we're in a great position to probably win this bet.
Yeah. And other quarterbacks like Hurts, they don't need him to pass the ball to win.
No,
They don't need
I
him to
wouldn't
throw
bet
for
this
200,
market.
300 yards. No, I don't think that
I
I
don't
would
like any
either.
value.
The only one that's interesting, hear me out for a second, and I didn't even look at the price, but I will pull it up right now. The most passing yards.
Mm-hmm.
What if Washington upsets Detroit and Jaden Daniels has 350 yards in this game and then plays in an NFC championship where they lose and he has another 250. So that's
Mm-hmm.
what, 600 yards on top of the 268 he already has. That gives him 868 yards. Is that enough to be the leader in 3 games? I don't know, but I think it's pretty close.
When Burrow won it with 3 games a couple of years ago, he had 721.
That's good context to know. So the number is basically 700. That's what you're shooting for.
Yeah.
Allen is already a third of the way there, right? Because he's got 272 times 3. That's what, 816 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So he's already there. But again, the caveat with Buffalo is Buffalo could lose to Baltimore. Yeah, I mean, you could
It's
talk
interesting.
in circles. I
Yeah.
know it is. It's fascinating, and I could land on several bets, including a bet that I just saw at BetMGM. As I'm scrolling through this market, they have a number on Kelsey to have 4 receiving touchdowns in the playoffs, and it's 20-1. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, I like okay, so here's where I land. Rushing leader, I like Cook.
I do too.
Receiving bets, I like Kelsey, man. 15-1 for the yardage. And then you were just talking about the touchdown one as well. Kelsey has been the receiving leader the last 2 years. This would be the third straight.
Kelsey
We're
Moon.
getting good numbers. Yeah.
I
I
wanted to
like
throw
it.
this out before I forget, since we're talking about long shots. We have a listener, Robert Osborne, who sent me a DM, it looks like yesterday. He said, here's a long shot, but a huge range for Super Bowl MVP.
Oh,
And the
wow.
name is Xavier Worthy. And I thought, Robert says the range on Worthy is as low as 80-1 and as high as 150-1. Chiefs probably win this weekend, and they have every chance against Buffalo or Baltimore. This is a guy that can run it. He can catch it. He can hit a home run. He might be able to throw a touchdown. That is that joystick guy. And again, MVP in the Super Bowl is only in the Super Bowl. It's not body of work. It's one game. It's not the whole playoffs. I don't think that's the worst idea. Xavier Worthy right now at 150-1. If they get into the game, he's going to be 20 or less. So just something to think about.
Yeah, I could sit here and say, oh, look, now you've got all these weapons back. Look how healthy they are. They've got D-Hop and Hollywood Brown, and there's Kelsey, Pacheco. They're finally healthy, and it's been something that we've been waiting on all year. But the number provides context. That's the name that isn't getting discussed. But he was explosive, and he was used in a number of different ways throughout the regular season. And, of course, because of that number, you're right. If they get in, where's he at? Yeah, it's probably 20, 25. Certainly. Kelsey's going to
And
be how short?
Kelsey is 7 or 8. I was just going to go there. He's going to be
Yeah.
sub 10 because then the
Yeah.
Swifties will all start betting it.
Yes. And again, it's hard for the Chiefs to win and it not be Mahomes, especially third straight Super Bowl. And he would have a chance for a third straight MVP, fourth overall. Most likely your winner, of course, but at 150, that's a nice ticket to hold on to. That's not a bad idea. You have an offensive weapon on the Chiefs, and you get a ticket that size. I kind of like that. We've seen it before. We've seen it with Kupp. We've seen it with Edelman. These guys that do a lot on the outside or in different ways, gadget plays, then they end up winning the MVP when a lot of people did not see it coming.
Now, watch, because we talked about basically every team but these two. Watch the Texans and Rams make it to the Super Bowl.
Oh, my God.
150-1. I looked at it this morning.
What's your curve? No.